Welcome to Wait, What? Sports Biz Chat with DP and McGee, the podcast that takes an often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion even a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David Parro.
And I'm Tim McGee.
Well, Tim, we had a very muddy run for the Roses on Saturday. The NBA playoffs continue to be scintillating. F1 went head-to-head against NASCAR this week on TV in the States, but as you know, all of that is irrelevant to me because I just want to know what is on your mind.
I want to start, big story. Once again, we will not have a Triple Crown winner because the winner of the Derby is not going to be running into Preakness. It becomes too expensive or too risky, I think, for owners to risk running their horses if their horses suffer any sort of injury in the Kentucky Derby. But I think I'm like a lot of horse racing fans. That's what I look forward to each year, is that possibility of a Triple Crown. We can talk about the Derby a little bit more if you'd like. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple things. First of all, the television numbers were fantastic,
Which I don't understand why they were so big.
I don't know if weather in the Northeast that day, which there was, or weather throughout was maybe had people in front. I know that some of this is based on better capturing of out of home viewership as well as the streaming audiences as well. But everybody just had, big numbers, 18.5 million for, 17.7, which was the best figure for 36 years, which is pretty amazing, right? With so much else going on. But yeah, no, it did very well. Peacock alone drew nearly 1 million viewers. So yeah, it was exceptional. And the one thing I want to say about, because the Kentucky Derby is known as the most exciting 2 minutes in sports, I'm thinking it got that reputation only because the 18 hours of advanced programming that leads up to it is so freaking ridiculous that anything would seem exciting at that point. But I'm sorry. I know there are people that are into it and there's the fashion and all that stuff, but my God, it's interminable.
It is. I think it's at least as long, if not longer, than the Super Bowl pregame show. It is insane. It's insane. The weather was terrible. So we had to hear all the old Abbott and Costello mutter jokes. Yeah. Was his mother a mutter and everything. But,
yeah, and the number of broadcasters and pundits and so forth that they bring out. Of course, Eddie Olczyk, who's more known for NHL, has been a regular. He's a huge horse racing guy. Who's the NBC political pundit that they bring us?
Kornacki.
Kornacki comes in to talk odds. So they have a whole thing like that. But then listen, I think there were a couple other storylines that are interesting. The return of Bob Baffert after a 3-year suspension.
Yeah.
And the welcoming of him with open arms seemed a little bit, but my goodness, he was the belle of the ball, right? Even though he only had one horse in the Derby this year and it didn't finish, in the money, so to speak. But he was like there was nothing ever happened.
Well, I did notice that as well. I didn't watch a ton of the pre-race. I only watched 6 hours of it. No, I didn't watch a ton of it, but I did notice that they didn't pay a lot of attention to it. He was welcomed back quite warmly. And I'm wondering, this is purely speculation on my part, within the racing community, is it possible he's just the guy who got caught? And so it's not like he's held in low regard by other people because he cheated and others didn't. I don't know. That was the first thought that crossed my mind.
Interesting, and certainly feels plausible because that business I think has been known to stretch and push, and he was always known as a guy pushing the envelope, and then he finally got the hammer thrown down on him in a very serious ban. One of the other funny things, and I guess this isn't that odd when you think about it, but every horse in this Derby, I don't know if you saw this, was a descendant of the great Secretariat, which I'm like, what a life well lived.
Well, there used to be stories about all of the progeny of professional athletes and how that was disrespectful to the family unit and how they didn't respect the sanctity of marriage or parenthood. But here it is celebrated.
Well, I mean, I
Yes.
think that but we do it quite often, I guess, date ourselves. I would say that for us, the first great horse that was a part of our lives was Secretariat.
Right, because I think there had been a long time before that when certainly before you and I were sports fans when they had the previous
Hmm.
Triple Crown run. And then we had in the 70s, I think there were three, if I'm not mistaken, right? Affirmed one, Secretary, and I think there was one other, and then there wasn't another one for
Secretariat, though, still my
oh,
goat.
the greatest athlete of the 20th century. The Belmont Stakes in particular won in record fashion.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, do you want to move on and chat some NBA since we're in the midst of, as I mentioned at the Open, what I consider an extremely scintillating, exciting, thrilling playoff run here for the NBA. My gosh.
So many storylines. I want to start, if you don't mind, recognizing Gregg Popovich. Pop stepping down after 29 years as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, longest uh, reign of a coach up until he stepped down. I don't know who has it now. 5 championships. Suffered a debilitating stroke last year during the season, which made him uh, required him to step down. He is now going to be the president of the Spurs, I believe, is his title. Anyway, it was it was a heartwarming scene to watch him being helped into the press conference. I think Tim Duncan was on one arm. Another former player was on the other arm. So he was clearly having some trouble walking. Um, but it was great to see him in public. And I think he said something to the effect, I'm not going to be called coach anymore, but I'll be called Hefe.
Mm-hmm.
So didn't lose his sense of humor, which he wasn't necessarily known for.
Well, I think first of all, I mean, Popovich now is obviously in the discussion, not just on the number of wins, but that's in championships, but he's there with Riley and Jackson, I think, is the greatest NBA coaches. And
Red Auerbach.
yes, yeah, Red Auerbach would have been the next one I mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate the Celtics, by the way. But you got to give them.
But beyond that, I think what he has represented to other coaches, Steve Kerr is a great example. You heard the things that Steve Kerr said recently about when Pop announced that he was leaving, what he's meant to him as a player and a coach. And I think that how he has represented the league, because the NBA more, I think, than other leagues, I think I can say this, has been very willing to accept activism from the players. Is that the right way to put it? Maybe outspokenness, certainly. And Popovich was like the ringleader, very socially active. And I think that certainly the players have admired that. Not that he was not that he wasn't a tough coach, by the way, but I think in terms of the human side of the men that he led, that will be as big of a legacy for him as his wins and losses.
I would agree, and open the door for coaches like Steve Kerr now, who sort of picked up that mantle in terms of being willing and not afraid to speak out on social justice causes. So yes, he will leave a great legacy. Personally, I think his greatest legacy is his sheer verbosity in his in-game interviews.
Wait, what?
His interviews were great by how taciturn and short they were.
Yeah, but he, if you compare him, say, to like a Belichick, whatever he didn't say, he said a lot in not saying.
Right.
That's how I'd put it. All right. Yeah. Listen, agree. I think this is it's time. He certainly served the league well. Half Croatian, half Serbian, which I thought was an interesting combination. I'm half Croatian myself. Anyway, yeah, great coach. And in some ways, and plus, by the way, he served. He was an Air Force guy, Air Force Academy guy. got really a start there as well. So I mean, yeah, just a pretty complete man.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So NBA playoffs, they're crushing. The games have been thrilling. The first round saw a 4% jump in viewership. Obviously, it's continuing the positive trend that started in the back half of the season. And they're delivering on the game. So while I think it is still fair to say that particularly early season, but regular season NBA games may not be the most exciting. I think the in-season tournament, of course, has added something to that. But the playoffs are unbelievable. And anyone that says that they don't play defense in the NBA is an idiot, because the defense is just lockdown.
Yeah. That's something I would say.
Yeah, I know. I'm
I'm
I
rubbing
had
off
to mix
on
it up.
you.
I don't want this all to come down on you, man.
No, I mean, you look at the second round, every visiting team won. Now, I'm not saying that the Knicks are going to beat the Celtics, or that that Golden State's going to win their series, especially with Steph Curry going out in the second quarter of Game 1 with a hamstring injury. But it does seem to indicate that, first of all, very unlikely that any of those series will go pouring out. And so it'll be interesting to see. And the longer they go, obviously, the better the ratings get. But you have you have some great series. I think I think that Boston New York series is going to be great. I think Cleveland, which was along with OKC, was unbelievable during the regular season. Took it on the chin from Indianapolis, and then you've got the Jokic out in Denver, who seems to have woken up. I mean, don't forget that the Nuggets fired their coach with like 5 games left in the regular season. Everybody thought, how can you do that? And now they're up 1-0. And
yeah, the Denver team and the Joker and Aaron Gordon story and Russell Westbrook coming on there, obviously formerly of OKC. That's been surprising. The finish in that Indiana Cleveland game last night, with Halliburton's just emerging as a huge star, and then of course in this Knicks Celtics series, obviously Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, of course, have been stars, I think, in the league, and not that Jalen Brunson hasn't been, but my gosh, is he ever on the map in everybody's mind? And how clutch he has been. So, but Halliburton coming on, I mean, you talk about a guy that's just making a statement right now. Right.
So he's doing it, and he's doing it without his father in the stands after his father had that dust up with Giannis Antetokounmpo in the end of the first series. There is some talk here in the New York area about Jalen Brunson being one of the top 5 players in Knicks history. I think it's a bit premature for that. He does take it to another level in the playoffs, but again, you and I are old enough to remember Willis Reed. I grew up with, Clyde Frazier, Earl of Pearl Monroe, and then you have guys like Bernard King and Patrick Ewing. But
listen,
not to say that
if they get through this series, I'm going to ask you the question again and see if you're ready. See where you're ready to go with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think. Listen, it's premature now. It may not be premature discussion a month from now.
Yeah.
But Boston played horribly the other night and still barely lost.
Right.
So
yeah, right. They couldn't hit a 3 for the life. Listen, there's so many things going on with the NBA. Obviously, with the new television deal, there has been all kinds of concern among some of the owners. We've talked about the Jim Dolan situation, with the Knicks not being happy about the number of potential losses. Playfly did an interesting look at this recently. And it doesn't look like they will be losing that many games to the national per team. Obviously, someone like the Knicks will be maybe somewhat unfairly affected by that because the loss of an individual game for them is something major. And with the team being in New York and as good as the Knicks are now, who knows how many times they'll be on that national scale. But even though some of the local RSN, and this is this movement away from the traditional RSNs, we know that, and we've talked about it a lot, that MLS has gone to the full-out Apple deal. We think the NBA wants to take a look at a national RSN deal, and what would that mean? Again, teams and owners like Dolan and the Knicks would look at that probably pretty unfavorably, but the streaming numbers were really good. And one of the things I think they showed here was that it almost doesn't matter, because the theory had always been you need to be on linear, you need to be somewhere where people can easily get you. And with the increase in streaming numbers for teams that have gone that direction, and the drop in the RSN on many markets locally, is more fuel to Adam Silver, I think, to get something like that done. So I think it's going to be a fascinating story to be watching.
Yeah, I think I would not be surprised if in a year or two we are sitting on this podcast. I might be surprised a year or two that we are actually sitting on this podcast, but assuming for a moment that we continue for the next year or two, that we are talking about a tipping point in which streaming becomes the predominant platform through which we watch sports.
Mm-hmm.
With certain exceptions, of course, but it continues to trend that way. It continues to move more and more in that direction. So it'll be interesting to watch.
How do we feel about these sponsorship deals?
All right, Tim, we haven't done it in a couple shows, but I would love to do a spotlight on sponsorship. I think you may have one or two as well. The first one I want to touch, and it's actually a licensing program, but F1 it was at the Miami Grand Prix this past weekend, first of 3 U.S. races, and Lego throughout one of the greatest activations tied to sponsorship at the local level and a buy-in with all of the teams. They built 10 Lego cars in full replication of the actual race cars, but they made them kind of like two-seaters. The driver parade, which is usually a fairly boring event. Sometimes they all jump in one little truck and go around the track and wave to the crowd. And other times they put them in individual cars and take them around. Both of the drivers from each team got in their own Lego car and actually went around the track. They got so into it. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion, said it was the most fun driver parade they've ever had. And then they had all kinds of local engagement after the fact, which is the real key, I think, to these things. So hats off to that program.
Do you happen to know, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you happen to know how long it took them to build those cars? Because I remember when my son was young, and we would build little SpongeBob SquarePants scene. And it would take hours.
there are stats on this out there that I've seen, and it was an insane amount of work, which of course doesn't narrow the window that much, but an insane amount of work by a ton of people, a lot of people putting in it, and a crazy number of actual Lego pieces. We can put this in when we post. We'll add to that. I don't have that with me right now, but it was significant.
Okay,
we could probably look it up and cover it off by the end of the show. It was a lot. But they looked great, and the drivers were like, there were Lego pieces on the track they had to clear off because the drivers were like banging each other. They were totally into it. It was hilarious.
Wait, what? They were
racing, basically racing each other. The cars were only going a few miles an hour. They weren't going that fast. But they drivers like to race. And so they were, in NASCAR parlance, would say, we're putting fenders in people.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a spotlight on sponsorship as well. Not since Vlasic Pickles sponsored the Association of Pickleball Professionals has there been quite a moment. Like, why didn't we think of this sooner? The insurance company Liberty Mutual is now the jersey patch partner of the New York Liberty, defending WNBA champions. I did read it. There seemed to be, not surprisingly, but it's not just, oh, you're the Liberty, we're the Liberty, let's get together. there seemed to be a lot of strategic thought on Liberty Mutual's part on why they were aligning with the New York Liberty. But I just thought it was it makes sense on the surface, but kudos to Liberty Mutual and whatever agency they happen to be working with, because what I saw was that the strategic thought that went into the partnership in terms of the audience reach and so forth, brand attributes of both properties, I thought was well done. So kudos to Liberty Mutual.
I assume we'll be hearing Liberty, Liberty, Liberty quite a bit during games.
Or we'll see Doug and the Emu courtside at Barclays Center. And thank you, you're welcome, Liberty Mutual, for that idea.
I remember when that campaign first came out, and when insurance company obviously has been going to the humor route for a number of years, and Progressive and Geico, I think, have done it very well. And Liberty seemed a little late to that game, but they've stuck with this campaign, and I think it seems like it's paying dividends. But I agree with you. Sometimes things, maybe they're just almost too obvious that they don't end up happening. But good luck with that. I did want to mention one other. We've talked about Spotify's sponsorship of Camp Nou. Spotify is now the naming partner of that Barcelona's venue, but they also are on the jersey. But they've traded out their logo for artists. They are doing one with Travis Scott coming up. There's going to be a private concert for Travis Scott's top fans at the venue, and they've done this with Drake. They've done this with Coldplay. This is just the kind of thing that you like to see. That it's like not just a sponsorship. It's not just a label. It's not just a sign. It's actually engaging with it, making sure people understand what the brand is that is associated with the team that they love, but also why their involvement with that sponsorship is a benefit to the fan. And I think Spotify's playing this one very nicely.
Yep. Before we break, it took 26 designers 22,000 hours to build those Lego cars.
And
so you were correct. You said we would have it before the end of the show.
And I did see also 400,000 individual bricks involved. So
400,000. Yes.
So we close the stats. We deliver.
Right. Nope. Yes, we do. No word on how many people stepped on a Lego piece with a bare foot.
The guy, and no surprise, I don't know if he was complaining or joking, because it's always hard to tell with Verstappen. He keeps it that he can be complaining or joking, and you could not tell the difference. He made sure that he's like, debris has to clear the debris. There's a lot of Lego pieces out there, which I thought was funny. Anyway, all right. We're very excited about the guest coming up, and we'll be back in a short bit.
It's time for our guest.
For over 20 years, the national governing body, U.S. Squash, has been led by Kevin Klipstein, a very rare situation in the world of NGBs. In his role as president and CEO of U.S. Squash, Kevin is responsible for building the sport of squash here in the States and ensuring a seat at the table in all international dealings. Kevin took the helm at U.S. Squash after stints at Sun Microsystems and at ProServe SFX, which is where Kevin and I first met. It's been a unique path to this role, but given his passion for squash and the fact that he was an All-American player at a school that I kind of forget, I just don't know which one it was. It's a path that obviously has just worked for U.S. Squash. So, Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, David and Tim. It really is. It's an honor to be here with you.
You are allowed to say what school it was, by the way, now.
It's a small school based in Ithaca, New York, I think.
Yeah, that we talk about a lot on this program, as I know you know. So,
Let's go Red.
Yeah. All right. In October of 2023, the IOC approved squash as one of 5 additional sports added for the LA 28 games. To start very generally, very broadly, what does this mean for the sport?
Well, Olympic inclusion means quite a bit, as you can imagine. The sport's been pitching the IOC for nearly 4 decades. And so for the athletes, first and foremost, for them to be on the brightest stage in sports is, it's amazing. And they deserve to be there for sure. for us here in the U.S., it really legitimizes squash right away. Sort of puts us at a tier that we haven't been before, and we're really just emerging here in the U.S. in many ways. We're not that well known, so we've already seen an increase in interest in the sport commercially at the grassroots level. So it's significant already, and we're super excited.
Let's take a step back, if you don't mind, Kevin, and talk about the mission of U.S. squash.
Well, it's my mission for everyone to know our mission. In that, if you ask our staff members, I would be really disappointed if they didn't immediately say, lifelong positive engagement in squash is our mission. At our core, we're a membership organization, and our mission is something like to lead the growth and development of the sport, increase awareness, support lifelong engagement, encourage sportsmanship, achieve excellence, sort of some common things among NGBs. In reality, we're in the fitness industry, we're in family entertainment, live events and experiences. And as an NGB, our scope's really broad, everything from grassroots all the way to fielding Team USA. So it's a broad mission, which stretches every NGB pretty thin.
So let's look at the global landscape of squash. Where, and it's a two-part question, but where do you see the U.S. ranking now, and has that moved over time? And I guess how important is the U.S. market, or is the United States to the World Squash Federation?
Well, I mean, I would say the U.S. market is massively important to the sport globally now, and has been for a while. It's hard to sort of contextualize it without geeking out on squash for a little bit.
Go for it, man. Do it.
So the sport's almost 200 years old. It started in England, and we didn't have the internet back then, so it evolved with different dimensions and different balls and different rubber substances of the ball. So in the US, Mexico, Canada, we were playing with a slightly different version. It was a narrower court, a faster ball, a harder ball, and the rest of the world played in a slightly different version, popularized mostly around the world through the Commonwealth because it started in England. And about 35 years ago, the US, Canada, and Mexico started to evolve towards the international version. In part, we knew we had to be one single unified game, particularly in order to get into the Olympics, but it just made sense. And so for about a decade, we invested a ton in our infrastructure. We had to widen our courts. We had to learn a slightly different game. And but as a result, in the last 20 years or so, we've been on the ascendancy in pretty much every category. We're up in participation 300 or 400%. And we have a bunch of really unique strengths, like the collegiate game is super strong and has a long, rich history. We're increasing participation in middle and high schools, whether that be private schools and increasingly in public schools. We're in more than 20 states now. And we have a really robust network of mentoring, tutoring, squash instruction in underserved communities, similar to the First Tee program. So we're doing well in terms of just broadening access to the sport in the US. And our women are number 2 in the world. So competitively, we're coming along. Again, it has been a bit of a transition. Our juniors, though, are knocking on the door globally. So we're quite significant in, as the rest of the world now turns to the US to say, now this is an emerging sport here. What's the US going to make of it? And we played a really central role in pitching LA 28 and the IOC in terms of getting squash included in the Olympics. And that partnership and collaboration definitely continues at the world level.
As David mentioned in his introduction, you've been CEO of US Squash for over 20 years. A remarkable run for the head of any NGB, certainly. Take us through some of the accomplishments of which you're most proud.
Well, I certainly didn't expect to be doing it for 20 years. And I had asked Seth Matlins, who recruited me at ProServe before I took this job, should I take the job? And he said, absolutely not. He said, well, what are you going to do after that? And So I ended up taking the job anyway, and it's been a challenge to drive growth in what's a niche sport, which is basically supported only by the people who are involved in it. And there hasn't been much of a marketplace commercially, but the Olympics is obviously changing that pretty quickly. So we've had the growth that I mentioned. We built a $41 million national center, which we opened in 2021, which really helped us recover from COVID a lot faster than we would have otherwise. So I'm proud of that. I think probably, with all that, how we've done that work as a governing body, you end up being the legislative, the executive, the judiciary of the sport. And so you sort of make the policies, you execute them, and you enforce them. And as a result, you're not really beloved. So working with integrity is super important to sort of have the respect of the community and the trust of the community. And so, our board, our staff members, how we work with shared values, upholding the characteristics of sportsmanship in the sport, I think has been really important to sort of unify us as a sport, and also just kind of enhance what the qualities of the community in the first place. So I think not only the what, which has been significant, I think, but also in the how. And, my hope is that just perpetuates.
Before I ask my next main question, I have a couple other things I want to say. One, Seth Matlins, always brilliant, not always right, but always brilliant. Number two, are you I think we've talked about this before. Are you the longest tenured NGB chief?
I'm not. I think I might be the second longest. I've got a bit of a rivalry with wrestling, which goes back to when they were taken out of the games, and then we were supposed to be put in the games, and then they put wrestling back in, and we were left out for a few cycles. But yeah,
I would advise you not to settle that on like where you play him in squash, which obviously you would beat him, but you'd have to then go wrestle him, and I don't think that would be a great idea.
With all these NGBs, it's a super collaborative group of people. I mean, they're amazing people, and we're all sort of rooting for each other. So, but yeah, I think second longest at this point. We'll see.
That's incredible. All right, diving back into the Olympic Games a little bit. Recently, the venue for squash at the LA 28 Games was announced, and I found it fascinating. I'm not going to say anything more, and I'm going to let you talk about it.
Well, the IOC LA 28 announced, I think it was probably about 2 weeks ago now, that the games or squash will be hosted at Universal Studios a lot. I think things got ahead of itself where it was revealed a little bit more than expected, in that it's actually going to be on Courthouse Square, which is the place featured in Back to the Future and To Kill a Mockingbird and a bunch of other movies, The Nutty Professor. So it's a pretty famous, high-profile area, and in addition to simply being on Universal Studios. So we're incredibly excited to be featured in what's possibly the most LA place of Hollywood, and so that's saying a lot. And again, just increasing the profile of the sport. I don't think we could ask for anything more. The sport itself, we could be anywhere, and that's sort of been a big selling point of the sport, where we can be in front of or within iconic locations, whether it be in Egypt, in front of the pyramids of Giza. We've done that many times. We've been in Grand Central Terminal for the last 25 years every year. So you can really put this all glass exhibition court anywhere. And so to be in such an iconic location is just, it's going to be amazing. And we're so excited. And we think everybody involved is pretty excited about it, which is a lot of fun too, because we're new to all this. And so the fact that others are embracing squash in that way is really exciting. The tie-ins with Comcast, NBC, and the potential to pull in celebrities, et cetera, is we think is all going to be really positive.
Staying on the Olympics, the Olympic Games can often be a catalyst for bold projects announced by sports and national governing bodies and things like that. Is there anything you can share on any initiatives that U.S. Squash is going to be undertaking, driven by the inclusion in the games?
Well, I would say yes and no. For more than a decade, because of the challenging nature of pitching to the IOC and whether or not you can be included, we've locked in on a strategy that we said, look, regardless of being included, being in the Olympics is not going to be a silver bullet for anything we do. We have to kind of do it on our own, and being in the Olympics would be an accelerant. And so we've been working towards building out for the long term our infrastructure. So our strategies haven't necessarily changed, maybe just the pace of them and their ability to really scale up. So, for example, coincidentally today, we announced what's called Project Beacon, which is an outdoor squash court in Union Park, which is on the west side of Chicago, near the Inner Loop. Great collaboration between the PSA, the Professional Squash Association Tour, and their foundation, and U.S. Squash. And it's an outdoor court in a publicly accessible park. And it's really, we call it Project Beacon because it's a beacon. It's a clear, bright, visible signal that squash is accessible. It's a really interesting sport to look at. It's an all glass and steel court there that we've helped develop. And these outdoor courts will start to go up in Miami, in Boston, Philadelphia, probably LA. So coming outdoors, which is funny because with TGL, I guess golf is going indoors and squash is going outdoors. So we're always a little countercultural. And then that's one we're excited about. And the other is similar technology. We're doing an indoor modular court. So a couple of years ago, we had a goal which was up in a day for less than 50K. So 20 years ago, Apple said we want 1,000 songs in your pocket. And so up in a day for less than 50K was our goal. We have that now, which is a modular court. Literally a couple people can set up, then you could take it down. And so we think infrastructure has been one of our biggest barriers to growth. And so if we can get courts up quickly, inexpensively as an asset that you can later on sell or put up for 6 months, take down, et cetera, that's going to be a huge game changer for us. So that's something that literally is coming online now. And we're really excited about that. And as we were talking about before, pickleball and padel, there's a trend where multi-sport facilities are being built. One, for example, in Philadelphia called Ballers, pickleball, paddle, squash, indoors and outdoors. They're going to open up in Boston. There are projects in Miami, et cetera. So being part of that trend is important to us. And I guess I would say the last thing that probably is a little bit influenced by the Olympics is a heavy focus on Southern California. It's always been on our radar. Second largest city in the country. Squash is doing really well on the West Coast generally over the last decade or so, especially in the Bay Area. And so just a little bit more focus on LA, hoping to get a facility in there around the time of the Olympics, but then also some outdoor courts as well. So those, I would say, modular courts, indoors and outdoors, accelerating growth, middle and high schools, publicly around the country, and then a bit of a Southern California push.
Yeah, that's huge. Good stuff. I feel I'd be remiss to not share a story, because when you mentioned golf, it just made me think of this clip. Was when Clip hadn't played that much golf. I don't even know if you'd ever played golf. And I was living in DC and Kevin was in DC, and we started playing golf on weekends. Like the first time he comes out, he's instantly on a path to be better than me very quickly. And he's like hitting like shots, like, his hand movement and hand-eye coordination is just so much more advanced than a non-athlete like mine are. And he's got kind of like, this game's easy, which is really annoying to hear from someone that hasn't played, especially with a game as frustrating as golf. Anyway, I was always like, damn, this guy I think might be able to play anything. Anyway.
Kevin, you didn't realize you were invited on this show for an airing of the grievances.
This whole thing,
it's like Festivus.
This whole thing is Festivus, basically.
Well, I love golf. I'm waiting for my kids to go to college so I can actually get back to it. But it's definitely a passion of mine. Love it.
Airing of grievances. Yes. This is a whole show. We invite only people that I have something to get off my chest on, Clip.
I got a problem with you, and you're going to hear about it.
Well,
All right.
I heard through the grapevine they actually quit golf, so hopefully I wasn't part of that. So
No. Oh,
Well,
yeah.
you heard it half right. He was banned from many of the courses
No.
for slow play.
play squash sometime.
Yeah. Pickleball, maybe. All right. Not long ago, it was announced that several national governing bodies would form somewhat of a union known as United Sports Collective to go to the sponsorship market. Just today, George Pine, the founder of Bruin Capital, said that this is one of the boldest experiments in U.S. sports, which I thought was an interesting thing from someone like George. Give us an update. How's it going? How do you feel? What's it going to do for squash?
Well, it's great to hear others commenting on it, and I know you too gave a shout out about it when we announced a couple months back. And it's been an idea that's floated around the NGBs for a while to do it sort of collectively as all 50 or so. I think this is the first time it's actually come to fruition and has some traction. And so, yeah, we linked up with rowing, fencing, sailing, and cycling, which have to a degree certain demographics in common, and basically are pooling our assets. They're all packaged up. We have an agent essentially out there in the marketplace selling it, and it just provides a broader reach, more efficient way to implement across multiple sports to activate. So about 350,000 families, thousands of events, of course, similar demographic, and so we're getting good positive reception. We don't have any early announcements on that front, but we do think, particularly because we're closing in on 3 years out from the Olympics, that we'll start to get real traction within the next 6 to 12 months. And separately for us, which we think was helpful to the project overall, is we worked with Dentsu last year to do a bunch of market research on our own community, which has been helpful to us in just selling squash, and we're looking to partner with sort of what you would traditionally think of supporting and being involved in our demographic, but also in brands that will expand awareness of the sport and the profile of our athletes. So trying to be as creatively as we can in those partnerships. But the Olympics has really changed the calculation for us. Like I said, creates much more sense of legitimacy for the sport, and that feels good, and we're looking to capitalize on it.
Before we get to our last question, just a quick follow-up, Kevin. Do you guys still go out to the market on your own, or are you beholden to this consortium of NGBs?
Sure, we do. We still go out on our own, and it comes down to communication, cooperation, collaboration.
I alluded to the two questions before we let you go. We asked these same questions to all of our guests. So first one is, how did you get your start in the sports business?
Well, I've been a lifelong squash player and a golfer, since being at ProServe back in the 90s, and just super active in sports. And I coached and competed after college. And I've always loved events and have been involved even in college, starting events, non-sporting events, and just like that whole process. So while I was coaching in Seattle, I ended up interning at an event production company that did big concerts and festivals, and parlayed that into an hourly role, actually getting paid through a squash connection, actually. A guy named Rick Ahrens, who played at Cornell also. And that was running events at a game company called Wizards of the Coast. And Wizards made a trading card game called Magic the Gathering, and later on did the Pokemon business, which was huge for them. But for Magic, we ended up working with ProServe Consulting. They helped us get a major sponsor, MCI, to do $1 million pro tour in this trading card game, which is at the time pretty innovative. Poker wasn't really even on the scene yet. And we got it on ESPN2, et cetera. And that was sort of a light bulb moment, like, oh, I love sports. I've been involved in sports. I really like this sports sponsorship and marketing aspect. And so like I said, formed a relationship with Seth, and he gave me a break, gave me an offer at ProServe, and kind of went on from there.
Right. And then the second part of the question is, what is one piece of advice you would have for a young person just looking to break into the industry?
Well, I would say similar to the advice that I got from friends and mentors when I was starting out, and that applies to sports and sports marketing, where focus on what you love and be willing to work hard to find a place within that space. And if you're into sports, if you love sports and want to work in that space, then the first part's easy. And like I said, I did an unpaid internship, and then sort of leverage the connection to get an hourly job and kind of work my way into, a bigger role at a company. And so just being willing to invest in that way, work hard, work with integrity, and being willing to learn as opportunities present themselves. And over time, you gain experience and you figure out sort of what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and then go from there. So I think just being open-minded and flexible. A lot of times we hire people just out of college. They love squash, and that's probably why they come into U.S. Squash. But those who are flexible, open-minded, within 6 or 9 months, they're in a different role than what we hired them into, but they're doing something that they excel in and they're good at and they really enjoy. So, I think that open-mindedness is super important, and just being willing to work hard.
Kevin, thank you very much. I tell you what, I am forever thankful for my years when I moved to DC to be at ProServe, and you were on that team, and getting to work with you and obviously others that you and I both stay in touch with over the years. It's just been pretty amazing. So congrats on an unbelievable run. Congrats on LA 28 and moving squash in, and all the other developments that you got to talk about. We pride ourselves on this show on trying to talk about the business in a broad possible way. So getting people that are actually at the forefront of NGBs and et cetera is important to us. And I think you've given some unbelievable information at a really good time. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you both. It's been a lot of fun, and appreciate what you do. I learn a lot every time I listen. I really do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so we're back. Thank you again to our guest, Kevin Klipstein, the CEO of U.S. Squash, another great guest. And I don't say that just because he's a fellow Cornell grad. So now's the point in the show where we take a look forward. But in this case, I think we're going to, dare I say, make a correction from our show last week, David? Is that a appropriate description?
Yeah. I mean, we're in the business of accurately reporting things. We had someone reach out to us on TikTok about the Captain Jenks bit that we talked about, which was when we were talking about prank phone calls, to issue a correction, I guess, that it wasn't Captain Jenks, the very highly regarded yet somewhat infamous prank phone caller from Howard Stern that did the OJ one into Peter Jennings. Al Michaels coming on.
Well, Al Michaels, right.
And saying, yes, he knew it. Once he heard Baba Booey, he knew it wasn't that. But the actual prank caller in that case was another big fan of Howard Stern's, of course. He went by the name Maury from Brooklyn. And this came to us from TikTok from a Peter Timpson. So thank you for that, for watching and engaging with us and setting us straight.
Yeah, we will. I think I got confused because he did say Baba Booey at the end of his prank phone call, and I just assumed that it was Captain Jenks. It wasn't. But in doing research, and thank you to the gentleman who told us about that, for watching us on TikTok. But I went back and researched it because you and I were talking about this between last week's show and this week's, and Captain Jenks is probably the most famous prank caller on the Howard Stern show. Had some amazing phone calls. But there was also another guy, which I came across, which I hadn't thought of the name in many years. Ponce de la Phone was another famous prank caller. So yes, but I would say that prank phone call, because of the seriousness of the situation, the size of the audience that this guy got, Maury from Brooklyn, I would argue that that has to be arguably the best prank phone call in the history of prank phone
Yeah,
calls.
and listen, we're not suggesting people should endeavor to make these prank phone calls because, as we talked about in the Shedeur Sanders situation, I think it could be potentially hurtful. And this one was Peter Jennings bought it hook, line, and sinker. He was all on board. Now he's been criticized for that because it did seem fairly obvious, but
Well, yes, the guy did it in a very sort of stereotypical, dare I say, racist voice. But I will say this about Peter Jennings. Number one, you assume that your producers have vetted these calls before they make it onto the air. Number one. Number two, Peter Jennings, notwithstanding this one incident, was one of the most respected TV journalists of all time. Probably most famously for being on the air oftentimes with Jim McKay during the hostage situation at the 1972 Munich Olympic Games. So, but as a longtime Howard Stern fan, I'm chuckling now at the thought of that phone call.
yeah, again, I think the seriousness of the issue and the fact that there was probably so much information coming in, but what kind of, as we look back on it all these years later, the I guess almost hilarity of Al Michaels jumping in, lest anyone think or whatever he said.
Lest anyone think this call was serious. Because
okay.
Al Michaels had been on the Howard Stern show many times.
Yeah. Okay. There are a couple other quick things I want to talk about. A lot of leaders from various U.S. sports leagues are in front of Congress talking about the future of streaming. Congress apparently wants to know, how do we keep, sports viewing affordable for everyone, which I think is a worthy cause, but we'll see what kind of a spectacle they try to make of it. I also need to ask you something. Sorry, I didn't prep you for this. Have you watched any Friday Night Baseball on Apple?
I have not.
You
Friday
need
night
to.
Is okay, because Friday night's date night.
And not just when the Cubs are on, which is when I look for it.
Uh-huh.
That's good that you have date night. I'm happy for you. That's good.
Yeah, well.
So I will send you and Carolyn a note on Friday to have a great date.
Okay.
It's spectacular.
What makes it so great?
It's
now I have to go watch
it's visually the best baseball experience. I felt like I was in an IMAX theater.
Wow. Okay.
It looks massive. The graphics do not impede anything. They put it in the right spot always. They're way cleaner. Have you ever looked at the baseball graphic across, say, Turner, across Fox, across ESPN, and say, what's the out count? Who's on base? What's the the count? What's the batter count? What's the pitch count? And you're like looking and you settle in on it. No problem here. It's clean. It's beautiful. I don't know what they're doing. The interviews that they're doing while they've been doing this a while with the outfielders during the game, unbelievable. And this isn't even commenting on the broadcasters. I'll get to that at another point. But the beauty of the game is captured like I've never seen in a baseball broadcast. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. I was just like blown away at the beauty of it. And it helped that the Cubs were just destroying the Brewers, but
I think if Congress wants to focus on one thing, they should focus on making a law that makes it a requirement to have consistent graphics across sports. So that so whether you're watching a game on ESPN or the S Network or whatever, you know what the count is, the out.
I hate it, man. It's so annoying. What about you?
I will check it out. Sort of straddling between looking backwards and looking forward. The Brazilian women's national team came up to University of Iowa campus and played Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. And despite the Fever winning by 66 points, it was never in doubt this game. It drew 1.3 million fans for a preseason game, not even featuring two WNBA teams. And last year, the WNBA average 1.4 million viewers. So I'm really excited to see what happens this year in terms of viewership if it continues to go up. We've got Paige Beckers in the league now. We've got a better supporting cast around Caitlin Clark in Indianapolis with the Fever. We've got Brittany Griner going to Atlanta after a long career with the Phoenix Mercury. Chicago with Angel Reese should be better. So I'm really excited to watch.
And their first
WNBA.
draft pick from
Yeah.
So and the clip of Caitlin going over to the Brazilian coach and thanking him supposedly for doing the game, gold.
For coming up, yeah,
gold.
Yeah. I mean, I think she wears the cloak of being the face of the game very well, but she also what I read from that, and I could be reading way too much into it, but she also understands the importance of teams like that coming up because it grows the sport in South America. Having said that, I think the Brazilian national soccer team featuring Marta may have done just as well against the Fever as the Brazilian.
Marta can do anything.
Team. Listen, we've come to the end of another show. Thank you again to Kevin Klipstein from US Squash. Thank you to our listeners. If you like us, what you hear, like us, follow us, subscribe, share with your friends. We love feedback, whether you're watching clips on TikTok or LinkedIn or X, formerly known as Twitter. We really do appreciate it. So until next week, he's DP. I'm McGee, and we'll talk soon.